Hello, welcome back to Sit and See. I'm Dr. Jared Jones. My research specialties are ancient systems of meditation, the cognitive science of meditation, Buddhist philosophy, and the philosophy of science. I've been a meditator and a Buddhist for about 20 years, and overlapping with that, training in Taoism for another 6. And I'm on a bit of a mission to help lay people living in the real world understand how to train in meditation. So that's what Sit and See is all about. You may have found me from some of my other content, but in this particular series, what we're doing is actually training in meditation, and I'm answering questions about the meditation techniques that I teach. Put briefly, I think there are a huge number of techniques that work to produce a very limited sort of capability in meditation, and a huge number of techniques that work to produce deep meditation in retreat. But there are only a few techniques that work really well for lay people living in the real world, and I've done my best to package a few of those together so that hopefully you, if you find this at some point, will be able to do these practices and benefit from them. So, looks like we have about 4 people here so far. Good evening, Cleric. Good to have you. And not sure who else is here. Yeah, so exciting announcements. Hopefully the audio is okay. I decided to scrap the lapel mic, which is why we're back to seated practice today. I've got a better mic coming. It's a headphone set, and that is very high quality. One of my teachers recommended it. So, for those who are not caught up on what's happening with the channel, many of you probably are, but there are a few things I don't teach, even though I think they work really well, because you just need so much more expertise to teach them. There are a huge number of body-based practices that come from Shaolin Temple and Chinese internal martial arts and traditional Chinese medical system, this sort of thing coming through the Chinese lineages, and also similar things coming through the Tibetan lineages. So once again, I train in some of these things, but I don't teach them because you need to know a huge amount more about them to teach them than you do to do them. So I've partnered with Neil Ripsky, who's a Shaolin lineage holder, to teach the physical part of meditation stuff, and a really, really high quality version of it coming through the Shaolin Lohan system. Lohan palm, not Lohan chuan, not Lohan fist. And so this is the internal art. So a bit more like Tai Chi, Bagua, Xingyi, internal martial art, mainly. And furthermore, he also has the Qigong, Neigong, Neidan aspect in that system as well. So yeah, I know. So much better than the lapel. The headset will be better too, I promise. So the Qigong, Neigong, Neidan aspect is basically comes from this idea that you have a body, then you have a subtle body, and then you have a mind, right? And you can work with your mind basically to go all the way down the path, which is one Buddhist approach. Another Buddhist approach that usually is only found in Tantra, but in some of the Chinese systems they have without having to take empowerment, is to work with your subtle body and to work with your physical body to make everything happen more quickly. And I can tell you from personal experience that is 100% true, even though the techniques I work, as some of you know, they work very quickly. I was just talking to somebody today who goes, I've been meditating 3 years and I've been doing your stuff for 6 days, and I've made more progress in 6 days than I did in 3 years. And I'm going, well, you had heart before you got started. You had heart from training in what you had trained in before. And these really, really work. So you already had the qualities you needed to be successful. You just needed the right techniques. In any case, so the body practices and the chi practices he teaches, and if you go down to the links below in the description, the Lohan course will be launching very soon. He's going to be filming stuff today, he said, and sending me a few clips, and we're going to talk about them and work through it. And super exciting announcement. Super exciting. we have decided, we think, on a price that makes sense based upon popular vote. We think we're going to launch it at about $39 per month. But the first 50 people that sign up, we're going to give a coupon to do half off for 3 months. So it'll be just like right around 19 US dollars per month for 3 months for the first 50 people that sign up. So if you're at all interested in this, a good time to do it will be right when we launch, because you'll be able to try it out for a very, very, very reasonable amount of money for the first 3 months. So if you get on the list for the pre-launch, then you're going to be getting one of those coupons. Okay, so if this sounds interesting to you, and I do highly recommend it, check out the Lohan Palm link below in the description for this video. All right, cool. All right, so now getting into questions. For those who are new, I do questions for 15-20 minutes. Yesterday, I was wondering why I didn't actually get to a session, and then I realized we did a rumination. So we did do a session. We did rumination on the motivation for meditation. So I'm happy with that. I decided. But normally we do questions for between 10 minutes and sometimes 30 minutes, but I try to keep it under, and then we do our practice. And those of you who've been here before, we're oriented this way because we're doing seated practice today. That'll make Cleric happy. Okay. So Tao Te Ching has a whole bunch of information in it. I'm not an expert in that text, but it's considered to be one of the root texts for Taoist practice. And people don't know this about Taoism. They think it's sort of a do whatever you want tradition. It's not at all. And they have these core texts, and then on top of that, they have all these commentaries that are really rich. I mean, I've studied some of this with one of my teachers, incredibly rich commentarial layer. And then on top of that, they have another layer that I can't remember what it's called, but it's sort of like the commentaries on the commentaries and the root texts. And then they have another layer on top of this. So they have these 4, if I'm not mistaken, maybe there's more, but there's sort of like 4 layers that are considered to be really highly respected in the tradition. And they have tens of thousands of texts that are about how to train in their systems. It's not at all sort of a, oh, you just do nothing and it's all no, like it's extremely precise and extremely detailed. And they have spent one really cool thing about Taoism, for those who are interested, one thing that I found quite fascinating is that, for example, a Taoist training hall is called a guan. I'm probably butchering the pronunciation, but the word means roughly observatory or a place of observation, which is kind of an interesting name for a place where you're training yourself, right? And the way that my teacher there has described it on one occasion, he said, well, one thing that was a little bit different between the Buddhist communities and the Taoist communities is the Taoist communities did a lot of experimentation on themselves, and the Buddhists mostly kind of followed what was given by the teachers or what was revealed through other teachers as the tradition went on. And so it was a little bit different in terms of how it carried forward. And so he told me a story once. He said there was just as an example of how extreme they were sometimes, they would be doing these cultivation practices, and then they would want to know, well, okay, if you eat a lot of nettles or something, does that give you better concentration? Does it change the subtle body? Does it help with the practice? Blah, blah, blah. So if there were 50 of us, we would all start eating a huge amount of nettles, and then we would write down what happens to the, like half of us would eat a bunch of nettles and half of us wouldn't, and then we write down what happens. So they did experiments on this, like this, on themselves for decades. Hundreds of years. Guan. Yeah, thank you, Sweet and Sour. So he told me this one story when they were trying to see if there was any benefits to using lead, I think it was, or mercury in their practice. And they said, so they had 50 guys take lead or mercury. I can't remember which one it was, like a bunch of it, and the other 50 didn't. And you read the text and it was like, 50 of us died. Don't use the mercury. It's not good. Like they were willing to see, like they were willing to push it as far as they could to see if anything could help, was the point. So, in any case, these systems that have sort of cross pollinated with Buddhism in China and then been exported other places because of the Cultural Revolution and other reasons, they're incredibly rich with stuff that's really helpful. So, anyways, yeah, I can't recommend them highly enough. Yeah, the science it was kind of like an early scientific method kind of thing where people were turning their attention inward. And when they decided that pursuing immortality through external alchemy wasn't going to work, then they started pursuing a more sort of internal type of alchemy, which is one way to translate Neidan, right? Internal alchemy. But this internal alchemical process is basically working with the subtle body. And yeah, it works. It really does work. And it's similar to what you find in Tantra. And that's not just my opinion. There have been talks, for example, in Bhutan at the Vajrayana conference in Bhutan. I think I put that up once, where um, they've had Taoists come and talk at the Vajrayana conference about the similarities and differences as far as we can tell. You know, so it's using similar stuff, and the Taoists are quite good at this. And I'm glad that it didn't go away during the Cultural Revolution. It would have been a major loss for humanity. Also, it doesn't require empowerment, which means that you can start working on these things before you get into Tantra. And according to one of my teachers who I talked to about this at great length, or not at great length, but at some length, he said, you don't need to worry about not being able to do your Buddhist practice by the time you get to Tantra or something. If you do those practices, they support each other. Both of those practices will make each other better because they're working on the same stuff. So that gave me the confidence to go, okay, I'm all in, right? So anyways, yeah, check out the Lohan course if you're interested. You'll get that 50% off coupon when we go live. And the first 50 people that sign up will have it for about $19 US for 3 months. Also, we were thinking, if we don't get certain things right, or we're still working on something, or you know what I mean? We're working on the course and we want to make it good for you guys. We're going to need your feedback. And so while we're sort of ensuring that everything looks good and works good and that it's being received well, while that's happening, we want to make sure that that you're getting a price that reflects that. Hopefully we're going to come right out of the gate and it's going to be amazing for everyone that does it, but we want it to be very fair, Okay. Yeah, there's a lot of interesting stuff in the Tao Te Ching. I haven't studied it at great depth. I've only studied it to sort of a beginner depth. Oh, yeah, DJ. I've got a lot of advice. Go to the links down below and send me a message on Discord or Facebook, and we'll talk. Lots of advice. The thing is, we are living at the best time in history. It truly does seem bad because of the news and everything else. But hold on. I'd like to show you, if I can get it to come on the screen, I'd like to show you this. I mean, this... Oh, no. It's behind a paywall. Okay. Well, here's the thing. Despite the fact that there are wars going on and so forth at the moment, this is still amongst the least violent times in history. There's the least domestic violence, there's the least war violence, there's the least crime, there's the least hunger, or amongst the very least in history. There's the most literacy, there's the best medical outcomes, the longest, we're living longer than we've ever lived. We are by far living at the best time in history. Most of us live the way that royalty would have lived a couple hundred years ago, where every day you get to eat meat if you want to, you know? I mean, are you crazy? I mean, for centuries, you would have a slice of bread and butter was a luxury. You know what I mean? Or you'd have some potato with a bit of salt. And Sunday, you'd have your meat. You'd have your Sunday roast or whatever. Like we are living at a time in history where things are so good, we've forgotten how good it is. You know. So it's a wonderful time to be alive, truly, despite everything. Even if you put everything else in the balance, it is by far, for the most people, the best time to be alive, for sure. And then on top of this, consider the preciousness of a human rebirth. Right. This is from the Lamrim tradition of Tibetan Buddhism. Okay, I'll come to that, Andres. So consider the preciousness of a human rebirth. Right. You're not experiencing unbelievable, overwhelming suffering at the moment. Maybe you have emotional pain, but physically you don't have so much pain that you can't function. That all of your attention is bound up in pain, right? So you're free from that. You're not so involved with trying to just satisfy hunger or thirst that you can't function. Once again, you're free from a condition where you're just overwhelmed by hunger and thirst. You're also free from a condition where your mind is so dull, right? Um, like animals, for example, they can be very smart in certain ways, but try to teach an animal that killing is wrong, right? They have a certain kind of intelligence, but if you try to teach them ethics, or you try to teach them meditation, or you try to teach them anything that could really transform their situation in the long run, they can't do it. Only we can do that. So only we have, except maybe in very rare cases, right? Only we have this kind of intelligence. So you're free from the condition that's sort of like an animal's mind, or someone that has a great deal of mental difficulty where they can't learn anything that would take them further down they can't learn very much that would take them down a sort of one of these full paths of personal transformation. As much as I love my pet dog, I can't take him I can't get him to sit down and do meditation with me, right? But all of you can today take one more step towards having your mind under control. Think about that. It's incredibly precious. So you don't have unbelievable suffering that consumes all your attention. You don't have unbelievable hunger and thirst that consumes all your attention. You don't have a mind that is not intelligent enough. You're free from having a mind that's sort of too that lacks the right kind of intelligence to make progress in this stuff. So you're free from like this huge number of circumstances that would interfere with your ability to actually train your mind, actually become fulfill the full potential of what you are. It's incredible. On top of that, think about how complicated it is just for an apple to arrive at your house. That somebody has to grow it halfway across the world or halfway across the country, right? So somebody has to grow this apple. Somebody has to pack this apple. Somebody has to ship this apple. Somebody has to take it out of the shipping thing and put it in a grocery store and put it on the shelf. And then make sure that the conditions are right so it doesn't go bad before you get there to buy it. It's just an unbelievably huge web of stuff because every car, every bit of clothing, every bit of food that all those people had to use, right? All of that just to bring this one little tiny apple to you. Think about the incredible web of stuff that's required for this. Now, think about how even more complicated it is, right? Even more complicated it is that you get even one Dharma teaching, just one teaching. How complicated that situation is, that for a couple thousand years, people had to put it into practice so it didn't get lost. Thousands of hours of study, thousands of hours of practice, all of the financial resources that went into maintaining the institutions, keeping the books up, reprinting the books, updating the language so that the next generation could understand what was being said. Because from generation to generation, it's difficult to understand what the language meant in the previous generation. All of the translation projects, just for that first sentence of Dharma, to make it to right. And then here I am on a microphone. Think about how many people had to design this thing and then ship it, and then the computer and all the parts, and this mic and this camera and all the parts, and the things that they're standing on, and the furniture it's sitting on. Like, it's impossible, isn't it? When you think about how unbelievably complicated it is just to get one sentence to you. And yet here you are. Every day you could have Dharma, you could have the teachings, you could have exactly what you need. It's unbelievable. So not only has a Buddha come to Earth and taught some things that, even if you don't believe all this stuff quite yet, at, at least somebody left some advice that really, really helps, right? And then other people put in huge amounts of time to maintain all this, and people had the kindness and the wherewith and the concern for others to make sure that it was maintained and maintained and maintained until it got here. It's impossible. It's almost impossible, and yet it's happening, right? It's literally happening as we sit here. So not only did all of that incredible stuff that basically shouldn't have happened, right? It's like impossible that this would have gotten here in terms of complexity. It's here. And not only that, you're not suffering so bad that you can't do it. You're not so hungry and thirsty that you can't do it. You're not so dumb that you can't do it. And you're living at the best time in history, where there's the most of everything and the least of the harmful stuff, the least disease, the most food, the most water, the most clothing, the most peace. Right? So you can do this. And it means something, because everyone else is depending upon you to do this. What do I mean? Think about all the mistakes you've made in your life. Where did that come from? All the people you've hurt. Where did that come from? It came from your mind. It came from your mind being out of control. It came because you couldn't control your anger. It came because you couldn't control your arrogance. It came because you couldn't control your lust. It came because you couldn't control your jealousy. So it matters for others. It'll have a real impact on everyone else you interact with if you do this. Because you won't be that prick that you were 5 years ago. Do you see it? I was talking to, sorry, I'm going to get emotional. I was talking with one of my new students today, And this guy has had anger problems his whole life. And we had a heartbreaking conversation, our first conversation, where he said, I was just going through what anger has done to him. And I said, has it made you lose opportunities? Like where you've missed out on things in terms of your career because you got angry? And he said, yeah. And I said, have you missed out on relationships because you got angry? Yeah. Have you hurt your family because you got angry? Yeah. Have you hurt friends because you got angry? Yeah. And in like 10 days, I get on the phone with him. I'm talking to him on video, and he's a totally different person because he's doing the work and he's putting in the practice. And he's telling me, I'm not just inferring this. He goes, today I had parent teacher conferences and I had to meet with parents, and I did 5 minutes of body scanning before the parents got there for the parent teacher conferences. And he said, my behavior was completely different. And I was able to handle the stress and the difficulties that they brought to the conversation completely differently than I normally would. And I went, there it is. You can take control of the rest of your life. It's in your hands. One of my favorite lamrims is called Liberation in Your Hands. Liberation in your hands. It's already in your hands, right? You get to do it. You get to do this thing that's going to benefit everyone else because you won't be part of the problem anymore. You see it? So it's not absurd. It's not meaningless. It's not pointless. You're living at the best time of history when the impossible has happened and you have teachings in front of you that can help you become something that will be beneficial for everyone else in your life. How incredible is that? Just let that feeling hit you everywhere, you know? Just let that feeling hit you everywhere. Let it, in the same way that when you get outraged, right? Nobody's watching you right now. Hopefully, you're sitting somewhere that you can just sort of let it happen. But let the feeling completely take you over. Think about this. You're living at the best time in history. So many people put it in so much work, so much time to get this one 5-minute rant to you, right? And for some reason, you have the perfect circumstances to take this information about training your mind and become something that is better for you and for everyone else for at least the rest of this life, if not forever. Holy shit. Let that feeling completely take you over in the same way that when you're outraged, it fills you up completely. And then when that feeling comes up, when it gets strong, just hold it with concentration, the same way that you hold your mind on the breath, or you hold your mind on 5 points, or these other techniques we do. Just let the feeling come up, just hold and marinate in the feeling. Wow. So precious. Incredible opportunity. Everyone you've ever hurt in your life, every single person you've ever hurt in your life, because your mind's out of control. Now, for the first time, you can fix the thing that's been the problem from the beginning. Wow. How incredible is that opportunity? That you have the freedom to do this. And there's the potential that maybe within a few years, the amount of harm they'll do to others will be so much less. And the amount of harm you do to yourself and the times you feel embarrassed because of, we all have shortcomings and we make mistakes and all this stuff. But the amount of time and energy and heartbreak you have in yourself because you go, I'm failing what I could be by chasing around all this bullshit, that will become less. Wow. Let that feeling of, holy crap, I really do have it in my hands. How precious. How incredible. Let it fill you up until you feel it in the top of your head, in the tips of your fingers, in the tips of your feet, and then hold it with concentration. Now, since it's emotion, right? And emotion is sort of like a wave, it'll come and sort of crash, and then it starts to recede. So, probably the feeling's going down. So, this is rumination meditation, is what we're doing at the moment. So, now that the feeling has probably calmed down a bit, do it again. You're living at the best time in history. It's almost impossible to imagine the complexity that's required to just bring an apple to your home, a single apple. And yet, for 2,500 years, people have transmitted things that can transform your mind so that you'll be more beneficial to yourself. You can have more of the stuff you want, right? You can have more of the stuff you want. And at the same time, you can bring others more of the stuff they want. This is in your hands. And you don't have unbelievable, overwhelming physical pain. You're not suffering from intense hunger and thirst. You're smart enough to do this. How precious, how incredible. The meaning of life is literally in your hands, both in a conventional sense, having a nice life for the rest of this life, and if there's an afterlife, taking that into your hands for the first time. How incredible. And if that feeling begins to become intense again, then just hold with concentration. You can do this. Life has meaning. You have a purpose. How incredible. You can benefit your mother. You can benefit your father. You can benefit your siblings. You can benefit your family. You can benefit your friends. You can do things for the first time to make sure that something this precious doesn't go out of existence. There are no words. It's almost impossible to imagine just uh, just an apple making it to your front door. And somehow this information has made it here. Now you have a chance. Don't miss it. Don't miss the chance. So like this, when you do rumination meditation, you're building up the feeling of some aspect of the path, some mind that is part of the path, like this is an unbelievable, impossible opportunity, and yet it's here, and I can help everyone. I can benefit everyone in a totally common sense, non mystical, non bullshit way because I won't be a prick. Right? So simple. All of the things I've ever screwed up are because I was a prick. Right? That's it. So you generate the emotion and you make it powerful, intense, because your distraction, your bullshit, your tendency to keep your mind on activities that don't matter. Yeah, this is rumination meditation. This is what I call foundation 5. That's right. So this is meditation on a particular kind of gratitude. So you build up the feeling through thinking it through. And then when it fills you up, you hold it with concentration until it's extremely powerful. And this is how you motivate. Someone was asking the other day, how do I motivate myself for meditation? This is how you do it. You think things through until the motivation is overwhelmingly powerful. Okay. Yeah, that's what rumination practice means. So if you've studied, like when you read the suttas or the sutras, or you read the lamrim, and you see these topics and it says like impermanence, right? The fact that you are going to die, you don't know when, and there are only certain things that are going to matter when you get to your deathbed, right? These 3 facts are true. You're definitely going to die. You don't know when, and there are only a certain number of things that are going to matter when you get to your deathbed, right? And mostly what's going to matter is how well you did with your training, right? That's mostly what's going to matter. And what's the measure of that? It's the same measure we were just talking about, which is how beneficial were you to others? You know, did you actually take your practice off the cushion? Were you actually generating high quality states of mind throughout your daily activities, so that a lot of people, they get off the cushion and then they'll spend hours yelling at somebody or or criticizing people or whatever. How could that possibly be the path? Okay, let me go back through the chat because there have been quite a few questions. All right, so Andres asked about the subtle body. So I've done this on previous streams. This is a very simple experiment, but you can do this at home. This is a very simple thing, okay? So The Indian systems, a lot of Asian systems from different parts of Asia, all across the Himalayan region, including Bhutan, Mongolia, Tibet, blah blah blah. They share in common this idea that you have a physical body, that your mind is non-physical, and that between the two, there's a subtler substance that isn't physical, but it does have a shape. It has a form, right? It's not, how to say, it's not protons, electrons, and neutrons. It's not made of the same stuff as ordinary matter, but it is sort of a subtler physical substance of some kind. And in addition to that, that experientially, and again, there's no reason for you to accept that this is a real thing in the real world, but at least experientially, when you place your mind in your body, you feel structures there that aren't your bones and aren't your muscles and so on and so forth. They seem to be sort of, how, I don't know how to put it quite the right way, but sort of like floating inside the body, but not the body. And when you do things with that system that you can feel as tactile stuff, when you do things with it, it affects your body in real ways, and it affects your mind in real ways. And you can use this subtler thing that you have access to inside of your body through tactile sensations. You can do all sorts of things with it that are beneficial for your practice and beneficial for your body and beneficial for your mind. So a little experiment that I like to show people to just give them a sense. The idea is that your mind has subtle physical substances that come with it anytime it goes anywhere. And there's a little experiment you can do at home that gives you just a totally beginner's sense that this is a real thing. Okay? So one really easy experiment you can do is take your hands like this, and they're about, I don't know, a foot apart, or about shoulder distance apart. And just imagine there's an iron spring, a really hard spring between your hands. You can move it, but it's really hard to move, right? So then just press as hard as you can and press this spring, press this extremely hard to compress thing, press, 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 and exhale like you're lifting something heavy. And put all your energy into crushing this spring. And then as you breathe in, just let off by like an inch, and then press again, maybe 2 inches, and then let off by about an inch. Press again. Okay, now bring the hands about 2 inches apart and just go like this. And most of you will probably feel that there's now like a magnetic feeling, or like a feeling like there's something kind of tangible between your hands. So now my teachers would say, if you've done this practice, then just put the hands together and sort of squish that back in there. And then you can put it on somewhere if you want, your face, just put it back inside somewhere. So there are subtle physical substances like this that in the beginning, it doesn't really matter if you think there's real substance there or if it's just something that your imagination does that has a real effect on the body and mind. It doesn't matter which one you believe in the beginning. But working with these substances you can feel in the body, and there's dozens of them, dozens of different ones, is part of what you do in Qigong. It's part of what you do in Neidan. So these are Taoist and Buddhist practices from China. It's part of what you do in Tantra, in Buddhist Tantras, as you work with these substances. And there is some research on this. The cognitive scientists have looked at Tibetan practitioners of Tumo, for example, inner fire. And with inner fire meditation, you take these substances and you crush them and compress them and crush them and compress them over and over and over again into the lower abdomen. And then once you've compressed them into the lower abdomen, you made them much more solid, much more tangible, the abdomen itself starts to heat up. And they've measured this in a lab. Yogis of Tibet, there's one scene in that documentary actually where they took an infrared camera and put it on Garchen Rinpoche, who's a very highly accomplished meditator. And you can literally watch the heat starts down here in his abdomen and it rises up like this through his body, through the central part of his body, which is where the central channel of this subtle body is, by the way. Also, in the Western Academy, they've started looking at what are called body maps of emotion. And they've asked people from all different cultures all over the world. And for some reason, when people talk about their emotions, most of them start here in the middle of the body. That's interesting. And then they go like this and they move through a column in the center of the body out to other places in the body. That's interesting. Kind of sounds like there's a subtler structure in there that your emotions are moving through that's not quite physical, but also not quite so ephemeral that you would call it like formless, right? It has a form of some kind. So, from the point of view of traditional Chinese medicine and Taoism and Tantra, you have a subtler physical sort of structure inside you that's not made of protons, electrons, and neutrons. I call it sub-physical structure or sub-physical substances. And they're tactile. You can feel them, but you can't see them. And they've done measurements actually on guys that are really good at Qigong, for example, who are projecting Qi out of their body to, and again, you can feel it when they do it on somebody because they use it for medical purposes in China, for traditional Chinese medicine, and they use it for needling too, for acupuncture. In any case, you can feel it, and it really does do stuff to you when they put this energy they've cultivated into your body. But when they measure, for example, and look for electromagnetism, or they look for stuff that you could be ejecting, there's nothing there. So this is why I say we're pretty sure it's not actually energy. We know what energy is, right? We energy has to do with physics, and it needs to take the form of some kind of particle, and there's no particles coming out. So whatever it is that's coming out is not made of particles. And since we consider it from a Buddhist standpoint to be physical substance of some kind, I call it a sub-physical substance, right? And there's a bunch of them. So in brief, that is the subtle body. And systems like Lohan, like the one I've been plugging basically all week, you work, and this is the brilliance of Tantra, Taoist practice, Shaolin practices that are in this genre. Your subtle body affects your body, and it affects your mind. Your mind affects your subtle body and your body. Your body affects your subtle body and your mind. So what the Shaolin people said is, well, what if we make all three of these pieces run in the same direction instead of just working with the mind only so that it'll affect the other two? What if we also work with the chi portion, the subtle body portion, and we work with the body, and we make them all head the same way? That's efficient. And while we're at it, why don't we make the body work better in general so that I have longer to do this? Because I don't want to get to like 50 and have my body not work anymore and not be able to practice anymore. So let's make sure the body works really well, right? Anyways, hopefully that's enough. Why is the chat being so weird? I don't know. I don't know. Rands, hello, Rands. I was in the midst of something. My apologies for not saying hello. Gail Wolf, found your channel recently. Happy I did. Like how you combine academic with actual practice. This is something, if you're still here, Gail, this is something I learned from my teachers. So my teachers encouraged, and actually in the most of the Tibetan lineages, and what I know of the Theravada lineages also, because I know some really excellent Theravada practitioners, and also, furthermore, what I know of great Zen practitioners from Japan, not sort of California Zen and Western Zen, but traditional Zen practice and Chan practice in China as well. Those people are great scholars, right? Like there is this thing actually in Buddhism that, I mean, consider, for example, that if you were training with the Buddha at the time of the Buddha, you would have had to memorize the sutras. Yeah? You think that's an unscholarly endeavor? If you had to imagine going to school and having to memorize all your textbooks. So you had to memorize the instructions verbatim and memorize all the textbooks, basically, and then go do your practices. For goodness sake. So Buddhism has a long history of having extremely sharp academic sort of approach combined with actual practice. And I think you find this in all the lineages, actually. It's not just the Tibetan ones or Theravada is extremely scholarly, extremely scholarly. The really good Theravadins I know are like they're fearsome in terms of their scholarly understanding of their own traditions. I mean, absolutely fearsome. Sometimes I start sweating when I talk to them. Sometimes they give me a run for my money. Anyways, yeah, this is a common thing. If you want to understand exactly how to get where you're going, you need to understand the map really well. Otherwise, you'll end up running off in 100 different directions. Uh, Prevail maintenance. It's talking about the piece of furniture behind me. Yeah, my wife is she sells antiques. She has a website called House Lore, and she sells antiques and books. And she's like extremely good at finding antique stuff for unbelievably low prices. Like I think this thing was, I can't remember what, it was something stupidly low, like 120 pounds or something, you know? And I mean, it's probably worth 10 times that, but she got it for almost nothing because she's a genius. Anyways, I wanted to have a nice, I don't want to mess with the camera, but I wanted to have a nice sort of place to put my altar and books that dust didn't land on them. And so she found me this. It was quite nice of her. Okay. We're getting Galactic Guru asks, what can benefit everyone? Meditation? Question mark. The thing is, Galactic, if you think about your life in a totally normal, non-spiritual, practical way, and of course, certain things in our life happen that are out of our control. Certain things get screwed up because sometimes the world is a screwed up place. Fair enough? However, at least to the degree that you're in control of your life and where you're going and what you're doing, to that degree, whatever that degree is, if you look at your own decisions throughout the course of your life, the things that have gotten screwed up have been because of weaknesses in your own character, where you've gotten too angry, too lustful, too arrogant, too jealous, too sort of wishy-washy about your motivation, intention, willpower, force of mind. Indifferent, right? Careless. So it's because of our own bad character. Yes, there are things out of our control, but the things that are in our control that have gotten screwed up have mostly been because we don't have good character. And so the things you actually want in your life, the hurdle you have to jump over is your own bad character, right? In terms of the part you can control. That's the only hurdle you have to jump over is your own bullshit. So if you train your mind and your character becomes better, everything else you want is closer in hand than it's ever been. Because now that hurdle is smaller than it's ever been. The chance that you're going to get halfway to the promotion at your job and then quit because you don't have the willpower becomes less because you can develop the willpower. The chance that you're going to be at the meeting at work and get so frustrated and out of control with your behavior that you're going to lose your job 75% on the way to the whatever, or you're going to screw up your marriage because you cheated on your partner, or you're going to ruin a friendship because they got something that you wanted and you get jealous. All of that becomes less because you have this under control for the first time if you train your mind well. You see it? So even in a totally ordinary, conventional, practical sense, everything is everything will be affected by, and therefore everything is kind of riding on, in terms of what you can control, how much you can control this. Furthermore, think about all the times you've hurt people or let people down. It's because of this, the weakness in your own character. And if you train your mind, you can change your character, which means that you can actually stop yourself finally from hurting other people and letting them down in the ways that you can control. Because sometimes people have weird expectations, right? But at least in the ways that you can control that are sort of, let's say, sort of normal, right? They're not going to be let down because you lied to them. They're not going to be let down because you got angry and said stupid stuff you didn't mean. They're not going to be let down because you cheated on them. You're not going to be let down because you were unfair and took more than you should have, right? Because you trained your mind. So whether or not you're going to help everyone at a minimum by just not hurting them, and whether or not you're going to get most of what you want out of life in terms of all the moving parts you can control, because life could throw you for a loop, right? But in terms of all the parts you can control, comes down to this. Do you have control of your mind, your heart, or do you not? So when we do 5-minute breath meditation, for those of you who have been around a while, when I say everything is riding on this, I'm not like being funny. Everything you care about really is riding on this. The health of every relationship you have, the likelihood you're going to get a promotion, the likelihood of a better rebirth, according to Buddhism, the likelihood of achieving nirvana, the likelihood of attaining Buddhahood, everything that kind of matters in terms of you being able to control stuff is riding on this next 5 minutes, right? Because if you can do this, if you can control your mind for a few minutes, you're on your way to being able to transform your entire character. Now combine that understanding with the preciousness, how rare it is you get this opportunity. My goodness, put everything we've got into it, right? Put the whole mind in there, for goodness sake. So precious. Not only that, you're going to die. You don't have much time. And the only thing that matters is how much work you've done on this, because the only thing you can take with you is your mind. My goodness, put your mind on the breath. Do you see it? I hope those of you who have been around a while can start to see how these understandings build up. This is how these understandings are meant to stack up, as the Buddha said, until your hair is on fire to do the practice. It doesn't just happen that you're, to not overuse the analogy, but it's not like your hair just catches on fire. You think it through. Wow, everything really is riding on this. Wow, it really is rare and precious that this is happening. Wow, I really could die at any moment and lose the opportunity to do this, and I don't know where I'm going to end up next. I better do this. I better, at least while I'm here, I've got 5 minutes. Let's do this 5 minutes full on. See what I mean? Okay, not to belabor the point. Galactic asks if I meditate even when I don't want to. Most of the time, yeah. I really do. Like when Neil was on the podcast the other day, and he said the thing I still struggle most with is consistency. I really do feel him on that. Because as you do more, and as you get more capable, and as you're capable of doing more, there's always a feeling like today I could have done more than I did. And so there's always a feeling like, well, couldn't I have done this? Couldn't I have done that? Couldn't I have added on more? Couldn't I have done? And there's a certain healthiness to that attitude. I've met a lot of practitioners, actually, including some great Tibetan teachers who make that kind of statement also, where they say, at some point you just sort of, there's this wonderful analogy of when you achieve renunciation, it's a bit like realizing for the first time that you've been on a chair made out of thorns. And there's no way after you've realized this that's what the problem is, that you can sort of readjust where you are on the chair and make it feel okay, right? You're like, until I get out of this chair, it's not going to feel okay. And so at some point, you just feel like, man, I should do more. I should do more. I should do more. And actually, you have to scale back to whatever it is you're capable of, despite the fact that the motivation has grown stronger. If you push further than you can, then you burn yourself out, regardless of that motivation. And then you stop making progress because you'll be on for a week, off for a week, on for a month, off for a month. So you have to, with your motivation, you have to mature your attitude also, because probably around 80%, 70 to 80% per day of what you could have done is the appropriate amount, so that you can build up capability over time instead of doing 100% every day until you're absolutely fried and you have to take a long break, which is easy to do in the beginning, as some people know. I won't name names. Okay. Um, so Yashwant, I would say whichever lineage you're drawn to, that's a good lineage, like a proper lineage, just go train with those people. If it's Chan, if it's Zen, if it's some type of Theravadan practice, if it's Tibetan, I don't mind. Any lineage that's a full lineage that can take you down the path, go do it. Uh, on the other hand, on the other hand, the place I've sort of taken in this process is there are certain skills as a layperson in particular that if you bring those skills on board will allow you to get more out of the lineage you choose to train in, because quite a few techniques that are taught in traditional lineages are really good if you were going to go into full-on retreat and do those techniques, and they're very, very difficult to get going if you're not doing them intensively in retreat, you know. Yeah, we can measure neutrinos. So chi is not neutrinos, and I think if you were storing that many neutrinos in your lower abdomen, you would die of radiation poisoning or something. So it's not particles. It just isn't. We've looked at a lot of qigong people. We've looked at some meditators, and whatever they're doing is not because they're storing some particular type of particle in the body. Uh, Yeah, Galactic, I agree with you. I agree with you. I think the translation for chi or prana, a pretty good translation, is actually vitality. It is a type of substance that comes with consciousness that makes you alive, right? That's actually a pretty good encapsulation of the concept that when consciousness is there and consciousness is life, along with it comes this substance that isn't quite physical. And that substance or substances can take a whole range of forms. And again, the systems that use these things are not they're not like dumb simple systems. They're extremely sophisticated in terms of what you're doing with yourself. Okay. Shahid. Yeah, go ahead. You can ask. Mm. Barack asks if my wife is Buddhist. No, it's not too personal. She's not. She's not a Buddhist. She is a, how to say. She's more on the spiritualist end. Somewhere between. She was doing a pretty rare tradition. It was a movement in the UK for a while called Celtic Reconstructionism. And then she takes sort of a spiritualist bent, but at the moment she doesn't have a particular community she's training with or meeting with. Um, but she doesn't really follow anything in particular at the moment. She thinks my Buddhist stuff is kind of funny sometimes. She doesn't get it, and it's okay. we have an understanding. Okay. Dylan asks if a practitioner could be fully satisfied with belief, doctrine, dogma. Yeah, it takes a long time. you need to work with what's accessible to you and put the rest on a shelf. Don't say yes, don't say no. That's the best attitude. If you can't get your head around the rebirth thing, then just say, you know what? I don't have really good evidence for it. I don't have really good evidence against it. I'm just going to put it on the shelf. And I'll continue gathering information. You know, I'll gather more reasons, more understandings of all the levels, and sort of treat it like, okay, you know, I'm understanding a model of stuff, and you put it on the shelf, like a, you know, like a, I don't know, like a model airplane or something. You know, you put all the pieces together, you know how they work. It's all there, sort of in miniature and abstract on the shelf, and then at some point, hopefully, you have experiences where you go, oh, it's not just a model. Or you meet people and they tell you things after 3 or 4 years of knowing them, and they've spent a lot of time in retreat, and you go, you know what? This is a reliable person in every other way that I've encountered, and now they're telling me that they either have these kinds of experiences or they know people who have them, and there's no reason for them to make that up. Or you look at the scientific evidence, for example, for rebirth, blah, 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 blah. So you just take the parts that you can't understand yet or do yet, and you just put it on the shelf. Yeah? That's it. And then you carry on. And then over time, you build up knowledge and experience, and it grows. Okay. Your let's say your belief, your confidence grows. I think you mentioned before Anthony J. Man, I don't know what happened. The chat went absolutely nuts tonight. This is like super weird stuff in the chat. No, I haven't. Hans, I haven't been to Sri Lanka. I'd like to make a trip around Asia in general, and Southeast Asia and India. And there's just a huge number of holy sites and important things I'd like to see. But no, I haven't been yet. Yeah, you're right, Cleric. It's been I've only caught some of it. You guys got rid of a bunch. Taylor. Sorry, I'm just looking at the deleted messages. Well, I don't know if Tally is still here, but I'll just comment on the comment that got. I'm assuming Tally got put on silent. Tally probably left. Hold on, let me look at this other one. Gosh, the chat just got so strange. So anyway, so tally ho, if you are still here hanging around on silent, here's the thing. So I made the decision that I was going to do this full on, and at the moment at least, I'm putting in between 70 and 100 hours a week, helping people, teaching, creating content, doing stuff to try to benefit others. And so, unfortunately, it does take a certain amount of money to keep the lights on. Otherwise, I would never mention it, you know? I wish that wasn't part of it. I'm not trying to become rich or something. But unfortunately, yeah, if I want to do this full time and help people and teach these classes and do all this stuff, either I have to monetize the course that I teach and make it unavailable to people, which I don't want to do, or I have to monetize the channel and put ads on everything and then produce insane amounts of content that is mindless and whatever, that drives engagement, because that's the stupid stuff you have to do on the internet. to make money, right? You have to make controversial stuff and be whatever, whatever, so that people tune in. And I don't want to do that. How does that help? So the relationship that is developing between myself and the community is, for me to carry on doing this, some people have to support financially what I'm doing through donation, right? That's pretty simple. So I don't see a problem with that. I've talked with my teachers about it, some of whom are great practitioners of things that are very similar to Zen. And we've talked about it at some length for years, actually. How do you handle the financial side of this in a responsible, ethical way? And what I've come to is, you can't put a financial barrier between people and the information they need, right? You always have to have a pathway for people who are authentic and genuine, in particular. But I think basically everybody, you have to have a pathway that they can get to that information for free. And you have to be willing to help everybody who is sincere and genuine and wants your help. And that will require, if you're doing it full time, that some people provide financial assistance. But there's no barrier to them getting the information, even if they weren't providing the financial assistance. So the difference here is just this. If it turns out after a year or two that there's not enough support financially from the community, no problem. I'll go back to work. I've run several businesses over the years. I've worked in several different situations. I'll go back out there and I'll get work. But what that means is that I'll have like 10 hours a week to help other people instead of 80 or 100, right? In a way, it's sort of like, well, no problem. But on the other hand, I would much prefer to benefit people to the degree that I can, with full intensity, full on. So if the community thinks it's valuable, then they can donate. And if they don't think it's valuable, or maybe the community just doesn't grow enough that I'm able to pay all the bills, then I'll have to do something else, which is fine. I'll continue helping the people that want to hang out and learn more, and I'll just have to scale it back so that there's, scale it back until it's just kind of a few people that I can actually help and handle with the amount of time that I have. I mean, I before I started doing this, I was teaching like that for 5 years. So I have some students that have been with me 5 years, and all the money that came in from the time I was teaching them went to charities, went to benefit people, went to all sorts of stuff. You can go look it up on my Facebook page. It's all there, where the donation money went over the last 5 years, for example. Oh, by the way, since we're on the subject and I'm kind of wrapping it up because I've got to jump out and get into a class with my teacher. At some point, I'll share this, probably when we get closer to it. But every year, I help sponsor a reading of the entire Buddha's teachings from the Sanskrit tradition coming through the Tibetan tradition, called the Kangyur, and the commentarial tradition called the Tengyur. And so there's a small monastery that doesn't get, at least as far as I can tell, doesn't get quite enough financial support. And so every year I sponsor, with the help of my former community, and eventually when we get there with the help of all of you, I hope, I sponsor a big reading of that prayer, and then anything that's left over that sort of wasn't the direct money for the prayer just goes straight to the monastery. And because of where they're located, it doesn't take that much in terms of US dollars to just pay for a huge amount of their activity for the entire year, including medical costs, cost of books, costs of the conventional kinds of teaching subjects, because they have some younger monks there that are going through school, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. So, I mean, that's where a great deal of the donations and things that have come in have gone, besides a couple of upgrades to the software I was using or what have you. So you can go look it all up if you want. Anyways, yeah. I mean, I hope those of you who've been here a while that kind of makes sense, and if it doesn't, no problem. Tally, if this isn't the sort of thing that you like, there's a lot of other stuff out there. No problem. Okay. let's see. Chi has been, what is that? Chi has been measured. Bioplastic body. I've never seen anything, DJ. I've never seen anything in like a proper journal anywhere, a proper scientific study of any of these subjects where they've been able to find anything. Like they'll find that, I think, from what if I'm recalling correctly, it's been like 6 years since I've read this research, but like they can show that the blood vessels dilate when they move chi around. I think they can show that in some cases the fascia will move a little bit differently inside the hand or whatever when they're doing certain things. But again, there's, from what they can tell, there's nothing besides like ordinary radiant heat, which doesn't account for the amount of heat that's appearing in the other person's body, for example. Like the radiant heat from here to here is not enough to account for the heat change in the other person's body, but nonetheless, there is something that's moving from their hand into that person's body that's creating heat. So, as far as we can tell, that is not a physical substance. It's not made of anything that we know about at this stage of the game. Okay. Should one wait till they are confident in things like karma and rebirth before taking refuge? I would say, generally speaking, you should have a fair amount of confidence. You should be at least 50-50 before you take refuge, Unless you're the type of person where like something deep down in you says, this is it, and I'm definitely doing this for the rest of my life, and I'm going to become confident about this by studying it, and I'm not giving up on this no matter what, right? Some people are like that right from the beginning. If that's you, then you could take refuge right away. Otherwise, yeah, you don't want to do it for a while and then quit. That's really, in terms of karma, that's really bad. So it's better to wait until you have more confidence. So I'm running out of time, my friends. I'm running out of time for the day because I'm meeting one of my teachers at 10 UK time. But little dream, if you'd like to send me, go ahead and send it in the chat. If there's time to answer, I'll answer. If not, then reach out to me on Discord using the links in the chat in the description, or reach out to me on Facebook, one of the two. Discord is a little better, and I can discuss it with you. All right, my friends. Yeah, I think that'll do it for the day. We did another rumination somehow instead of other types of practice. But I guess that's fine. I've been meaning to get around to rumination with everyone, and I just hadn't done it. And somehow the last 2 days we ended up doing it just by chance. But yes, for those who are wondering about Foundation 5, this is how you do it. You use observation, reason, things that actually move your heart, move your emotions. And then when the new attitude comes up, then you hold it with concentration. And then it'll start to fade because this is what emotions do. And then you go through the process again, think through the reasons again, and then it comes up, fills you up, you hold it, and then it fades, and you do it again. And so that's how, if you were going to do 30 minutes on one topic, for example, that's how you would do it, is you would just generate, starts to go away, regenerate, starts to go away, regenerate, and you would do that for the session, right? So that's rumination meditation. And this is actually the way, because someone was asking, I think, about how to transform some of the stuff that's on the surface of your mind, like you have attitudes that are screwing you up, or ideas that are screwing you up, or certain kinds of thoughts and emotions that are screwing you up on the surface of the mind. This is how you fix them, at least part of the way, unless they're really, really bad and you need to talk to a therapist and deal with other issues you have going on. This is how you do it. You begin to replace the stuff that doesn't work with stuff that works on the surface of the mind. Yeah. Okay. Well, since no other questions have come through, I will say, as I usually do, good to see you all. Hope to see you again soon.